I am Dane. This is Forced Adversity, and I am here with the one and only Mark Brooks, cover artist for Marvel Comics. As you know, he's had other projects for DC in the past as well. But yeah, how's it going, man?
Good. How are you, Dane?
Great. So yeah, I was pretty surprised and honestly kind of flattered that you were interested in the content I was making. You know, I was telling you I don't normally try to reach out to creators who are of any prominence, you know, because I don't want to drag anybody into the drama that I dive right into on a regular basis. But yeah, so I really appreciate you reaching out and taking interest. So
No, of
um,
course. I mean, I listen to a lot of different content, and content both I agree with and disagree with, because I think it's important that anybody before forming an opinion about anything should know very well what both sides of the issue are instead of just deciding, because something tends to agree with their point of view that they should
yep.
just go along with it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I fully agree. You know, that's a comment that I've gotten a couple of times since that debate the other day, where people are like, you know, you're stuck in your echo chamber too, and I'm like, well, I mean, yeah, to a degree, but I also am aware of that, and I seek out to find contrary information. I weigh that against what I already think, and you know, I adapt accordingly. I think you like you said, you have to. To
Well, that's the thing. I mean, I think that especially now, it's we all have a real tendency to yeah, we seek out comfort because when we and I'm sorry if you can hear my dog upstairs, she's going nuts. Um, we tend to seek out comfort because the way the world is right now, everybody is so segregated in their beliefs, so everyone's always looking for something that's going to make them feel good. I mean, people in general, as a whole, don't like change. Whether you're right, left, or center, people don't like change, and so people tend to, yeah, that they seek out that comfort food, in their beliefs, and I can understand why. I do the same thing. I think we all do. So
sure.
I always like the idea when someone goes, "Yeah, well, you're in the echo chamber too," and I'm like, "Okay, so you're in an echo chamber. You just admitted it. You just said two. So I don't understand why you're basically using the fact that you don't like the fact that I'm in an echo chamber to justify and make yourself feel better about being in your echo chamber. It's just it becomes this real big circular logic issue
Yep.
that drives me crazy.
Same here. And it's difficult to counter sometimes because, you know, like you said, people are, you spend enough time, you know, fueling up on this media that basically feeds your bias and stuff. And as a matter of fact, the platforms themselves, as we know, and we're learning more about, do not do not make it any easier. You know, you got like Facebook that yeah, they just that whistleblower just came out talking about how they prioritize outrage content and you know, the most inflammatory stuff, and that's, you know, a long enough timeline, you end up with something like what happened January 6th. You know what I'm saying? So
Well, I mean, did you? I don't know if you've seen. I don't remember what the article was or where it came out. It wasn't Medium. It was but this it was a guy who was obviously left leaning, but he wanted to see what it was like on right wing um, social media, basically. So
okay,
he created a new account, and he immediately went and he created new accounts on YouTube and Twitter and Facebook, and then he went and subscribed to only right leaning people, and he tried to stick with moderately right isn't the word, but how about normal right? Just people like Ted Cruz, Mitch McConnell. He was following like normal right wing media people, um, and after a week the level of just nutball conspiracy things he was getting bombarded with was insane. And I'm positive that if someone on the right were to do that with the left, they'd probably find the same thing, that they're
yeah.
getting really crazy things thrown at them after a week or two. So yeah, it's tough in this day and age to keep a level head no matter what side you're on. Um, I do personally find that one side seems to be losing their mind more than the other, but I can easily say that on social media, I find myself getting not outraged, but I found myself getting annoyed and irritated with some of the hard left as well.
Yeah, same here.
And I think that's important, that you keep that kind of level head, to not just automatically accept everything. If they're left leaning, I agree with them completely. If they're right leaning, I agree with them completely. You can't do that. You're not betraying yourself, and you're not betraying your beliefs by just looking at somebody and going, you seem a little cuckoo to me, but it seems like no one's willing to do that.
Yeah, it's there's this kind of this all or nothing kind of mentality that's developed on both sides, where it's like there's obviously a realistic notion, like it's a realistic thing that we are on a precipice in society. You know what I mean? Like there are things that are happening and going to happen as far as like climate change and democracy and so on that need to be addressed. Mm-hmm. And so you've got both sides are almost in this deathmatch mentality. And just over time, like you're saying, it funnels into, just almost more extreme views and less nuance, less room for negotiation or even trying to understand other points. And I found myself in that last year after 6 months or so on being on YouTube and Twitter. I kind of fell into a far left kind of mentality, and just because a lot of the ideas were attractive to me to learn about. Yeah, we're so far from anything that a lot of the far left wants to do. Disregarding how valid or invalid any of the ideas are, we're so far from it, and we're much closer to what the far right wants to happen, in my view.
I agree, and I think the reason is that I still lean pretty decently far left, is because in the end you have to look at the two arguments the two sides are making, and you have to mentally take it to the nth degree, take it to what they ultimately want. And even in the far left, with how crazy some of them act, and most of the time it's just not necessarily their point of view, it's just how emotionally they act, and they start losing the plot because they get so angry. Ultimately, if the left gets everything they want, we all have universal health care and everybody has equal rights, and and if the far right ultimately gets what they want, we have a ethno state that's led by a authoritarian. I mean, I don't. So while yes, I do mute and block plenty of far left people because like I said, they just get really annoying. Ultimately, if they do get what they want, is it that terrible? I mean, right?
Yeah, I mean, well, yeah, I agree. I think there's a lot of groundwork to lay, though, as far as like cultural views. Basically, I see it as like we have this society that still mostly runs on kind of social Darwinism. And, we need to move past that. We need to get to a point where, compassion and collective action and, community building are a thing again. We've become so isolated and insular, especially with the internet. And then now the pandemic makes it 10 times worse and stuff that, it's like we don't know how to take care of one another a lot. But
I don't know if it's isolation as much as it is selfishness, because I think that in this country, you can only be told you're special so many times before you start believing it. And our country is so focused on we're special. We're the most special country in the world. This idea that we're the best and we're so special, I think that people start believing it. And when they do, they lose track of what makes us special, which to me is the fact that we are all so different. But our country was built, unlike so many other countries, on empathy and on immigration and on welcoming people and being, the hosts to the world kind of thing. That I think so many people are forgotten. And that's why the one thing that bothers me on the right more than anything else is the vilification of anybody that doesn't agree with them. Now, I'm not saying people on the left don't vilify people on the right. I absolutely know that happens. Um, but anytime someone gets angry about someone on the right, it's normally someone on the far right, and normally has to do with legitimate racism, legitimate sexism, legitimate xenophobia, legitimate bigotry. Whereas we are almost treated on the left, they're dehumanizing us. And I may see someone on the far left call someone on the far right racist or something like that, but there's never a dehumanization of it. It's, I disagree with your belief and I'm going to label it something. Whereas the right, it is, it's like they're trying to make us subhuman, because when someone is treated subhuman, they're easier to hate because they're not human beings anymore. I hate the Hitler, but it is what Germany did to the Jews, in the 1930s. They literally spent years dehumanizing them, and they did it over and over and over, and they did it so much that the population started believing it. And by the time they went, okay, well, now we're going to start eradicating these people, they were like, well, that's fine, they're not human anyway.
Right.
And so this idea of they're not even people, and I see it on comic Twitter all the time, coming from right-wing comicscape people, let's face it.
Yeah.
That there's a dehumanization element to it. And the thing is, I would never dehumanize any of them. I may wholeheartedly, vehemently disagree with them, and I will push back on them hard, but I would never go to the point of saying, you're not a human being. You're not deserving of empathy. You're not deserving of feelings or consideration. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's what, it's not so much what they believe. It's that scares me, that terrifies me. Because the minute we start dehumanizing each other and treating each other like we're not actual people, fucking trouble.
Right. We can't even have a discussion at that point, right? Because anything that we say is not going to be taken as valid at all. And that's, like you were talking about the normalization of Jews equals bad, and I fully agree. It's there's this meme about, oh, everything I don't like is Hitler or whatever, and it's like, no, that's not what it is. It's not just saying that this is the exact same thing as Nazi Germany. It's just that there's a psychocultural element to how these things can play out with this type of propaganda.
Well,
and
let's also not forget that each side is kind of doing the same thing to each other.
Yeah.
Because, like, yes, there was and still is a case of people throw out racists so easily. They throw it out really fast, and there's a lot of legitimate racism out there. But people were using it as a stopgap in a conversation. Like it was really easy for someone to call someone a racist because it stopped being about the discussion at hand, and suddenly it was a way of making someone have to defend themselves, right? And it was so you could sideline a conversation by just calling someone a racist. And it was used too much, and it was also used legitimately a lot as well. But the other side does the same thing, because they do either it's SJWs or something like that. They throw out terms like, all I have to say is, I don't agree with what you just said, and they're like, oh, SJW, and it's like, okay, slow down, calm down. When it's like someone says something, blah blah, I don't agree with you, racist. Okay, whoa, slow down, calm down. Let's you can have a conversation, and you can even go as far as the favorite thing they go to, pedophile. Oh, you're a pedophile. I'm like, what are you talking about? It's the same tactic, even though they're two different things, two different sides. They totally disagree. The tactic is the exact same, and that is to put you on the back foot, take us out of the conversation, and make you have to defend yourself.
It's a thought terminating cliche. I did a video on that a while back. It's like, it's designed to, everybody has their own idea of what an SJW is, even if they don't necessarily agree about what an SJW is. If you think SJW is bad, and then somebody calls you an SJW, well, then that person, you no longer have to listen to anything they say, because It's just an SJW or woke or now CRT is becoming, the more politically used one.
Which doesn't even exist in anything below the
No.
college level. But
Nope.
I love that. That's the well. It's all buzzwords. It's all buzzwords and ways of labeling people to basically make them the other.
Yep.
We have to make them the other.
And the pedo thing, especially because like everybody fucking hates pedos. You know what I mean? So like,
Of course,
you call somebody that, then it's anybody with any sense of morality at all is going to stop and go, wait, are they a pedo? And you like it's definitely a surefire way to stop a conversation in its tracks.
in its tracks, absolutely, yeah. Well, and they know it. Yeah. And the thing is, and the honestly, the left is caught on too, because the left, I've seen a couple of times, the left calling the right pedos now because they realized, wow, that's a really powerful thing you can say, and you can literally put someone on their back foot by doing that.
It's true,
and it's
and you know what the shittiest thing about that is that it waters down actual cases and allegations of that type of thing.
Oh, absolutely. Well, the same thing goes with throwing around racist. I mean, sure. I'll give you an example. I did a cover for what was the book? Trial of Magneto #1.
Oh yeah, great cover.
And it was of the Pieta. It was an homage to the Pieta, and it was Magneto holding Scarlet Witch, right? And this was a case of, and I walked into it accidentally. I didn't know it was going to happen, but the Pieta does depict two technically Jewish characters, but it is Jesus Christ and Mary, two very Christian symbols. And the two characters that I had up there were two Jewish characters. And while some people were like, I had a few people that were like, oh, I have a little bit of a problem with this. I was legitimately called anti-Semitic for doing this. And that was one of those times where I was like, okay, whoa, calm down. You haven't had a conversation with me. You have no idea anything about me. And they went right for it right away. You know what I mean? Wow. In a very heated way. And the thing is, I try not to fight with any of them, and I try not to respond to them, because 9 times out of 10, there's nothing you can say to convince them of anything. So, you just let it go. And honestly, this stuff runs in 24-hour cycles anyway. So, it is what it is. But yeah, it's just one of those times that you're like, there's no nuance to conversations anymore. There's no there's no benefit of the doubt given anymore. Yeah. So yeah, granted, there are plenty of people that they shouldn't be given the benefit of the doubt, because their own behavior, their own timelines, their own Twitter streams shows that they shouldn't be given the benefit of the doubt. They've told you who they are. Yeah,
but there are people who weaponize benefit of the doubt. What I mean? Like they rely on it in order to continue to, be antisocial and whatnot.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean that's a beautiful cover, man. I don't know.
Thank you.
It's absolutely fantastic. And like it's especially on like Twitter and I imagine Facebook is even worse. Maybe I haven't been on there in a couple of years now, but if you're on Twitter and you're tweeting about politics and social issues, you've probably already got your mind very made up on things. So it's like it's difficult to encounter someone on that is actually open to a genuine engagement and is really willing to hear what you have to say and maybe reconsider some of their positions or anything like that, because everybody's an activist now. Everybody's got their goals. The right likes to claim that the leftist agendas or whatever. It's like, well, you guys have agendas as well. Like, everybody's got an agenda. What I mean?
Everyone does, and sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. I mean, when it came to that cover, the one person on Twitter that went really after me with that's anti-Semitic. I actually did engage her, and we ended up having a really nice conversation. And that conversation went from Twitter to us just PMing each other, and we had a long conversation. And it turns out that they were having some health issues and some issues with some financial issues, and I ended up donating some money to them to help them out. And this was not a, here's some money, please stop yelling at me. It was once we had resolved, we had come to a really nice understanding. They had apologized for throwing out names. And it was at that point that I went back and looked at their timeline and saw how much trouble they were having. And yeah, I donated some money to them. I helped them. I wanted to help them out. And I've done that with people on the right as well. I've had many fruitful conversations that started off with bomb throwing that turned into some really fruitful, helpful conversations. And I like to think that I learned something, and so did they. And I think it's important that we do that, but we can't do that. That will not happen if we are constantly dehumanizing each other.
Exactly.
It just won't happen. I'm not, and don't get me wrong. I am not saying that we should excuse any behavior, any sort of behavior that has to do with racism or sexism or xenophobia or any of that stuff. You should not excuse that. But also realize, especially some of these people that are easily influenced and that are easily convinced of things, realize that some of these people don't realize that what they're saying is racist or xenophobic or just unappreciated or dehumanizing. And that instead of just automatically throwing bombs back at them, try to engage them, because I've been shocked the number of times that I've tried to engage somebody with an air of understanding that I've got them to change their mind, or at least get them to see what it is they did wrong.
Likewise, man. I've this whole weekend after that debate Friday, it's been kind of a whirlwind. People asking me on their streams to talk and stuff, and I've encountered several people that started out and they had some pretty negative opinions of me, and by the end of it, we don't necessarily are on the same page 100% now, but like there's a little bit more understanding and nuance there. And speaking to what you were just saying about that person that was having a hard time, that's something that I think everybody would do well to consider, is that a lot of people are in pain. You know what I mean? There's a lot of trauma. There's a lot of, just like anxiety over what the fuck is even going to happen with our society. You know what I mean? In the near and long term. And that creates, it creates emotional distress that can come out in all kinds of ways, and, like even people on the right, this is something I try to keep in mind. It's difficult because I see some of the worst of, people from Comicsgate and such like that. But even a lot of the worst people, it's on some level, even if I don't agree or I completely condemn everything that they say and do, on some level, it comes from some place of isolation, alienation, a feeling of not being valued or understood, or they feel cast out, and those feelings can be valid, no matter how shitty the person is.
I mean, well, no, all of us as human beings our tendency is to project, all of us, right or left. The tendency is to project. And if I'm having, and it could be something simple. If I'm having a bad day and I get on Twitter and something pisses me off, I have much more of a tendency to put something snarky up there towards the person that posted this, whatever. If I'm having a good day, I may look at it and go, screw it. I don't need to mess with this. I'm going to go off and play video games or whatever, So yeah, it could be something as simple as that, but take that and put it on somebody that has a job who has a boss that is just a monster to them, So it's not just them having a bad day. They feel like they're having a bad life at that point. And they can't take it out on the things that's inflicting this bad mood onto them, because they get fired, or maybe it's their family or their spouse or whatever. They can't take it out on them, but they can go on Twitter and blow it out with somebody and feel a little better. It's temporary. It's a short little endorphin hit, but and so, yeah, I try to be understanding about that. And it also is why I might tend to be a little more understanding when it comes to people on the left, because if it comes to somebody who is, gay or trans or black, they're living in this, not all of them, obviously, but, they're living in a society where they are constantly kind of having a bad day, they don't have the benefit of white privilege in this country.
Yeah.
So yeah, I am going to feel for them a bit more when they get fucking furious,
Yeah.
or snarky or angry. I'm like, I can't really blame you, because they have to see this stuff every day. Either they're seeing it in the news, it's happening to someone they know, or it's happening to them.
Yeah, exactly.
I've been me just having one bad day.
I've been talking more recently about how I had a super rocky childhood, man. Just like wouldn't wish it on an enemy. The kind of things that I grew up in and experiencing and stuff like that. And I've done a lot of therapy and worked through it. But like when I stop and think about, but what if I wasn't white? It's fucking scary. Like I'd probably be dead or in prison. You know what I mean? Just because I had a lot of opportunities despite all of my hardships. Right. That I probably wouldn't have had in another community, or if I was, I've had dealings with the law that I'm pretty sure if I was not white, I would have turned out differently.